Saturday afternoon, downtown Portland. Right-wing Proud Boys and left-wing Antifa duke it out in the streets, carrying bats, shields, even guns.
First Amendment right to speech and assembly.
Why police did not declare a riot this time.
Protesting is a huge aspect of social studies.
Oregon's second-largest school district updates its social studies curriculum to better meet the moment. And pop quiz. Who's the gold guy on top of the Oregon Capitol asking for an Oregon newcomer? Here's the story. I'm pretty new. I'm new. I'm still new, right? I'm Dan Haggerty. Hi, welcome to The Story. This is the show, if you're new to us, this is the show that you can watch both actively and passively. Now, let me explain, because the rules are pretty strict. Now, passive watching, that typically involves having your feet up, enjoying a glass of your favorite beverage, and maintaining a very chill demeanor. Now, active watching, on the other hand, is it's pretty much the same thing, except you tweet sometimes or email us. You can email us at thestory@kgw.com. You can message me on Facebook at Dan Haggerty KGW or find me on Instagram. If you do use Twitter, comment using the hashtag HeyDan. We are listening. We will talk back. I promise you. If you watch the show, you know sometimes we do it right here on the show. And speaking of the show, shall we? Tonight, the big story is about a riot that Portland police never actually declared as a riot. Let's look at some video. No, not this one. These pictures were from last night after an anti-police march at Woodlawn Park. Police eventually declared this one a riot after officers say members of the group started throwing fireworks and rocks and balloons filled with paint and other stuff. 23 people were arrested after this one. We got some more video here? No, not this one either. Police declared this one a riot too, shortly before midnight Saturday for very similar reasons. This was at the Penumbra Kelly building on East Burnside. Officers say they saw people throwing rocks and bottles at officers, and at this occasion, 14 people were arrested. No, both of those anti-police protests on Saturday and Sunday night were eventually declared riots by Portland police. Now, this one on Saturday afternoon, though, was not.
Dueling protests turned violent in downtown Portland. Many of the right-wing protesters were clearly armed. That's a known far-right activist from Texas pointing a gun at the crowd. Portland police were, for the most part, nowhere to be found.
It seemed a little rioty to me. That was earlier Saturday afternoon. Alt-right protesters and Proud Boys squaring off with Antifa and other left-wing protesters in front of the Justice Center and federal courthouse. Now, some of them, as you saw in the video, at least one person showed a gun. Others had melee weapons and bear spray. Yet, still no riot and not a single arrest. Of course, up until then, Portland police hadn't exactly been shy about mixing it up with protesters, have they? I mean, we can dig back into our archives from the past 3 months, go ahead and drop our finger on a random date on the calendar and find examples of the stuff you're looking at here. Portland police in riot gear facing off against protesters, sometimes throwing tear gas into the crowd, bull rushing rioters, and using all sorts of impact weapons to clear those streets. And the reason they almost always provide for deploying those types of crowd control tactics are demonstrators who were throwing some kind of projectile at officers. So let's keep that in mind. To be fair, Saturday afternoon's dueling protest was different. Demonstrators weren't targeting police. They were targeting each other. But still, the question stands. Why didn't police declare a riot, even though they did say it met the criteria for doing so? And we know this because they told us. They put out a statement on Saturday and said, while the activity in the group met the definition of a riot, PPB did not declare one because there were not adequate police resources available to address such a declaration. PPB had roughly 30 officers available for crowd management, and there were several hundred individuals associated with the events downtown. And they questioned whether police should interject in fights that were, and I'm going to use their words here, between two groups with individuals who appear to be willingly engaging in physical confrontations for short durations. Now, our Pat Doris talked to PSU sociologist Randy Blazak about this, and Blazak said he's worried about the message the police, their non-intervention, what this sends to the public.
The concern is that sends a message that the police have a vested interest in the racist history of policing and are resistant to change, which is only going to bring the protesters out in force.
Couldn't it also be possible, though, that they really are just exhausted and low on numbers and there was nobody else to call?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, I think that's a completely reasonable assumption given how long these protests have been going on.
Right. Now, regardless of what message it sends, it does sound like police were willing to let these two groups fight amongst themselves without any police resistance because I guess the fight was consensual, I guess. But now, police didn't make any arrests. Let's make that point again. And they did not use any crowd control measures. In fact, federal officers were the ones who came in and cleared that area on Saturday afternoon. But let's fast forward to the anti-police protests Saturday and Sunday nights. We showed you a little bit of this off the top. Portland police had those ones fully staffed, and for obvious reasons. We've been seeing these night after night after night for, about 80 plus now. So they had more than enough resources to declare these riots, use various crowd control munitions, and make a couple dozen arrests. But it did seem strange that police seemed to be, I guess, caught off guard a little bit because this isn't the first time that right and left-wing protesters have squared off in Portland, is it? You know this. You live here. Far from it. We've seen police respond differently at different times, and we've documented the varying outcomes of their involvement. Let's take a look now into the KGW Vault. You might remember almost exactly a year ago, the Proud Boys, they came to town and they were met by counter-protesters. A lot of people were worried about major violence breaking out, but there was a huge police presence at the time, and they were able to keep the two groups mostly separate. At one point, they were literally using the Willamette River to keep them apart, which worked. There were some isolated fights. More than a dozen people were arrested, but police never declared a riot, and things stayed relatively calm. But let's go back to October 2018. When police decided to essentially stay out of it. Fights broke out downtown between the right-wing group Patriot Prayer and counter-protesters. At least 4 people got hurt. People had guns and knives and other weapons. This was a real brawl, but this time police did not get involved, saying that they didn't want to escalate things even more. And the Mayor Wheeler, supported that decision. No one was arrested at the time, and police didn't confiscate any of those weapons I listed. Some people viewed the inaction as a statement after aggressive police tactics got a little bit of criticism just a few months prior. So let's rewind a little bit more, this time to August 2018. We saw clashes between Patriot Prayer and counter-protesters once again, and police did get involved in that occasion, but they were accused by the ACLU and others of targeting and using excessive force against counter-protesters. Some people said that they were hurt by officers, like a protester who sued the city, claiming that she suffered chemical burns from a flashbang grenade. That led then Chief Danielle Outlaw to order an investigation of officers' use of force. We know that lawsuit is still ongoing right now. We've been unable to find what exactly came of that investigation, but we'll continue looking. Now, after 2 days of silence from Mayor Wheeler, we finally heard from his office about 20 minutes before this show started. Mayor Wheeler said that he vehemently opposes what the Proud Boys and their associates stand for and will not tolerate hate speech. Then he said this, quote, "I am closely reviewing and discussing with Chief Lavelle Portland Police Bureau's strategy to limit their intervention in the right-wing protests and counter-demonstrations. We are at a critical place where police officers are needed to intervene in protests where police officers themselves are the flashpoint." The only other city leader that we've heard from on this matter has been Commissioner Joanne Hardesty, a frequent critic of police. On Saturday, she tweeted, "Portlanders deserve to exercise their First Amendment rights without being attacked in broad daylight by white nationalists. Portlanders also deserve to protest without facing indiscriminate and excessive force from the officers who are sworn to protect them." Now, here's something that we think is worth your time that just happens to be on the front page of today's edition of the New York Times. It's a profile on our new Multnomah County DA and his new policy to not prosecute hundreds of protesters who have been arrested over the past few months. Now, we've talked to Mike Schmidt plenty of times on this show before, but this profile is a little bit different. It's interesting. It takes a look at his past and how it shaped his outlook on criminal justice, including teaching at a high school in New Orleans where all the students were black. The story also looks at the backlash Schmidt is facing from law enforcement and how some believe his policies will help or hurt the city in the long run. You can check it out right now on the New York Times website. All right, let's switch topics here and talk about coronavirus and its impact on young people. 2 people under 40 have died from COVID in Multnomah County in the last 10 days, and more than half of Oregonians who test positive are also under 40. Devin Haskins has a look at that.
Monday afternoon, Multnomah County Health confirmed a 34-year-old person died from COVID-19 on Sunday. Their gender, where they died, and if they had any underlying health conditions wasn't released. But it is the latest case of a younger person dying from COVID.
It's not unheard of, but it's a really sad and stark reminder that there is a spectrum of infection and disease with this virus, and that it can affect young people, including death.
It's the second death of someone under 40 reported in recent days. On Saturday, the Oregon Health Authority reported the death of a 37-year-old woman in Multnomah County. She had no underlying health conditions and died on August 15th.
So there's still a lot that we don't know about this virus, and we would love to be able to predict who is more likely to get seriously ill. So far, the only factors that have emerged as being really clear are age and underlying medical conditions like diabetes, kidney disease, and obesity, or carrying extra weight on your body.
Oregon's most populated county has reported 5 deaths from people under 40 due to COVID-19. Positive tests are larger in the under 40 crowd versus those over 40. And the majority of the positive tests are now being found in people in their 20s and 30s.
This is a group that socializes quite a bit. This is a group that we know takes risks. Certainly the numbers are in their favor, but I think this is a reminder that there are no guarantees with this virus.
And as colleges start up in the coming weeks,
we're seeing in national headlines that young people returning to college or university are congregating outside of what the university can't control in terms of classrooms and dorms. And so I think we see the potential for spread there, and we're going to be watching that really closely.
I do want to point out that over 85% of those under the age of 40 have not been hospitalized. Doctors say that doesn't make the virus any less serious for those my age or younger.
With the uncertainty of this virus and the number of people it can potentially reach, we can't predict who are going to be the unlucky ones who are going to get seriously ill.
Devin Haskins, KGW News.
There are 87 languages spoken in the Salem-Keizer School District.
We are proud to be what is often called a minority-majority school district.
How the district has been changing to better reflect all students. And an Oregon newcomer wants to know who's the gold guy on top of the Capitol. We'll tell you. And the other 111 people who move to Oregon every single day. And on this corner, science rules. When the story continues. Hey, welcome back to The Story. Thanks to everybody for writing in and sending in your comments, questions, feedback, everybody using the hashtag Hey Dan. We read all of it. I was just checking a few during the commercial. I get 2 types, and I love both. They're the kinds that I can kind of address at the end of the show, which I love to do. And then there are the ones that take research, and I like both. So keep both of those coming, and we will research questions and try and find the answers. And we'll even read the ones that hurt our feelings. Those usually come at the end of the show. Hey, let's take a viewer question right now about pandemic assistance. A few days ago, Judy Black tweeted at us and said, "Hey Dan, I read that no one in Oregon is getting the $300 from the government because the unemployment office doesn't know how to make it work. Is this true? We're all suffering and about to lose everything." Well, just this afternoon, we learned that Oregon will take the federal government up on that $300 unemployment bonus, which will last about 3 to 5 weeks. So you have that, but it's still not known whether the state is going to kick in that extra $100 per week for those benefits. So for a little background on this, remember when the CARES Act passed and people got that unemployment money, that extra $600 a week in federal benefits on top of what they were getting from the state? Well, that expired at the end of July. President Trump then signed an executive order extending those weekly benefits, but he cut the payment down to $300 a week. Now, the feds asked that each state kick in an additional $100 so that the weekly payments would reach and add up to that $400 per person. But the thing is, states really don't have a whole lot of extra money right now, and to pay out that extra $100 would be a lot. A lot of viewers did point out correctly that they don't have to pay that, and they pointed that out after a report last week. Thank you to everybody writing in. And Judy, you're right that Oregon hesitated on taking up the White House on those benefits because it wasn't sure if it could afford paying that extra $100 at the time, because that would amount to billions of dollars in state funding during a pandemic. So the bottom line here is, if you are receiving unemployment in Oregon, you should start getting at least $300 more a week once the feds approve our application.
Hey everybody, I'm Matt Safino. It has been a very active day in weather, not here in the Northwest, but around the country with fires in California. And of course, the big story is the 2 or are the two tropical storms in the Gulf of Mexico, which I am queuing my graphics up for right now to show and share with you. So first of all, let's skip past this and I'll show you what's going on with the tropics here, because it really is impressive. We have never had on the same day two hurricanes make landfall in the United States, but we're coming close to that right now with both, here we go, with Marco and Laura in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, Marco has already made landfall as a tropical storm, fairly weak. It's going to become a tropical depression very quickly, but still spread a lot of rain throughout Louisiana and other parts of the southeast and the Gulf Coast over the next couple of days. Laura, on the other hand, is about to cross the western tip of Cuba, emerge into the Gulf of Mexico, which has extremely warm water, and then develop into at least a Category 2 and maybe a major Category 3 hurricane when it makes landfall sometime around 1 p.m. Central Time on Wednesday. Now, that, of course, would be about 11 a.m. Portland time on Wednesday, but still, it is really quite remarkable that we've had both of these storms in the Gulf of Mexico at the same time. Luckily, Marco got sheared apart, and even though it's not a major storm with winds only 40 miles an hour, it does tie now 2020 with 1886 as the most tropical systems to make landfall in the United States by August 24th. We have had so many so far: Bertha, Cristobal, Faye, Hannah, Isaias, and of course now Marco, all making landfall in the United States by the state. So it really has been an impressive run to see that happen in such a short period of time. All right, I want to show you this image though. Even though we've never had two hurricanes on the same day, we have had two tropical systems on the same day. This is the weather map from September 5th, 1933, showing a hurricane here near Cedar Key, which is not in the Keys, but off the kind of inflection point where Florida makes the turn to the Gulf and the Gulf Coast there. And then another tropical system down around Brownsville. That was back on September 5th, 1933. So really, if you think about it, today, while not exactly two landfalls, the most impressive in terms of number of storms impacting the U.S. are about to in 87 years. Dan, back to you.
Very interesting. Yeah, thanks for the map from 1933. Also, Matt, during the microphone checks before you came on, we heard your son Enzo playing the drums. Next time, I expect a little cameo. All right?
I'll see what I can do on that.
Talk to him. All right, thanks. Appreciate it, Matt. Speaking of some of the younger people out there, we have a couple of younger viewers who reach out to us from time to time, and we love that. But I'm sure most of the people who tune into the story are grown-ups, and your school days are long behind you. But I'm wondering what you remember about your social studies classes. I guarantee it looks completely different at the Salem-Keizer School District, where most of the kids are students of color. And Brenda Braxton reports the district wanted the curriculum to start to reflect that.
Salem-Keizer is the second largest school district in Oregon and one of the most diverse.
We are proud to be what is often called a minority-majority school district.
Latinx, multi-ethnic, Pacific Islander, Asian, African American, and Indigenous American students.
We have some of the most diverse language learners. We have over 80 languages spoken in our district.
87 to be exact, including Spanish, Russian, Swahili, Arabic, and from the Pacific Islands, Marshallese and Chuukese. For the last 3 years, Salem-Keizer has been transforming its curriculum to better reflect those students. And now, with the national conversation about systemic racism, the district's mission of inclusion is more relevant than ever.
With our charge to become truly anti-racist educators, it's really put this on the forefront that we need to not just reflect, we need to act.
Administrator Gwen Brewy-Fink says teachers led that effort, overhauling social studies for grades 6 through 12. It goes beyond the traditional, white, U.S.-centric version of history and includes global perspectives that allow the students to explore their own heritage.
We have units now, which we never had before, around Pacific Islanders and our Pacific Islander population, why climate change, for example, is impacting immigration to Oregon. And that's a huge shift from maybe what you and I experienced when we were in social studies growing up, where it really was more about timelines and events and people, and really not so much about the critical thinking.
It is sad that students try and devalue their own culture sometimes to try and fit in with our mainstream culture. So then to be able to be no, this is my culture, I'm proud of it, and I want you to know about it too.
Salem Kaiser is recruiting more teachers of color, like Dean Wright.
And this is my 4th year with the district.
Because research shows students of color do better when they have teachers who look like them and have a shared experience.
We're going to use the present day and connect it and teach the histories of present day issues.
He's talking about events like the protests against racism and police brutality.
Protesting is a huge aspect of social studies. It's not just, well, here's what happened a long time ago. It's here's what happened, and it's similar to this current event that's happening right now, and it's affecting you.
The achievement gap is also affecting minority students, and remote learning last spring only exacerbated the problem. Administrators say feedback from teachers and families showed Pacific Islander students, English learners, and students experiencing houselessness were disproportionately impacted. So this fall, Salem Kaiser says it's doubling down on serving those kids. It'll distribute more Chromebooks this year. Last spring, 30,000 went out. The district also has a contract with Comcast to provide families with internet discounts and will expand access to hotspots.
Brenda Braxton reporting there for us. Now, Salem Kaiser says it knows families need a lot of support right now to help students with distance learning, so it's launching a parent academy this year to help families master the platforms their kids will be using. So I guess your school days aren't as far back as you thought. All right, I got this question here on Facebook from Cheryl. She says she's new to Oregon, and she wants to know who is the gold guy on top of the state building. Cheryl, you are in luck, because we actually have a segment just for people like you, the 112 people who move to Oregon each and every day. But people who've lived here for a while, you might know who the gold man is. He's called the Oregon Pioneer. He's supposed to be a symbol of the independent spirit of Oregonians, according to the legislature's website. The statue was installed back in 1938 when the current Capitol was built, and he's not solid gold, okay? So don't plan some like supervillain heist. Don't steal it. It's not gold. He's actually hollow bronze, a sculpture covered with gold leaf, just like that expensive ice cream you ate. The statue's been refurbished a few times in the past when that gold leaf is worn off. In 1984, the legislature actually didn't have enough money to refurbish it, so school children raised $40,000 by collecting dimes. With inflation, that would be like raising $100,000 today, which would be a lot of dimes. If you're new to Oregon and you have a question about living here, reach out to us. You can also email us at thestory@kgw.com. Find me on Facebook Messenger. Use the hashtag HeyDan on Twitter. Tons of different ways to do so. And now is probably a good time to try that out, because we're going to read some messages right after the break. And if you're a regular viewer of this story, you know what that means. Welcome back. Hey, let's keep Portland weird for a minute, with some punny street art on East Burnside. Our Nina Melhoff spotted this one on the corner of Laurelhurst Theater, right by Laurelhurst Theater. And listen, I'm not going to editorialize here, but the message sure feels on point. If you see something keeping Portland weird out there, or keeping anywhere weird, we want to see it too. That's Bill Nye, by the way, in case anybody doesn't quite recognize the famous scientist there. Send it to our hashtag HeyDan. You can email us at thestory@kgw.com and Science Rules. Let's read a couple of comments here. Judy Black. Thanks, bro. I was just crying over finances. Then there you are, bringing some light to my day. I appreciate you. It's not me, okay? That $300 not coming from me, not from my pocket, but I'm sure you're going to be happy with it in yours, and I'm happy to hear you're happy. Then this one's coming from Ken Jackson. He said, Blazers, ? We've been seeing fire and riot news for days on our over-the-air TV. It's inconceivable to me that we cannot watch the NBA playoffs Blazers-Lakers games. Yeah, that's a TNT thing. It's on TNT right now. If you can find a way to watch it, it's on currently, though I wouldn't advise you do that, because we have Kristen Severance coming up next with the news at 6:30. That's it for the story. Have a good one. See you back here tomorrow.